Hello! You're listening to the Tech Alliance podcast, or the TAP for short. My name is Andre, and today I'm flying solo as a host, so I'll have to work extra hard to step up to the level of thoughtfulness and care that Marina always brings. And today we're talking about growth, coincidentally, or not coincidentally. Growing yourself, helping others to grow, the best ways and places to do that without getting lost along the way. And with me today is a super special guest who's played an outsized role in my own growth. So I'm delighted to introduce the man who needs no introductions in our space, Chris Lavoie, Partnerships Leader at Aftership, and the founder of something amazing that we'll hopefully get to talk about today. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the TAP.
Hello, Andre. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited.
It's such a pleasure to have you on today. Can you start by saying a couple of words about yourself for those few of our listeners who might not know who you are?
Yeah, of course. So Chris Lavoie here, based in Toronto, currently head of global partnerships and business development at Aftership, which is a B2B software company in the e-commerce vertical. So anything post-purchase that happens after your package is shipped, we're helping out brands focus on that use case. And then on the side, I run a coaching and training community called Partnership Mastermind, specifically designed for earlier stage partner professionals. So Andre was an award-winning student who had come through a previous programming in 2024, and really excited that we have over 120 graduates now from 15 different countries from some pretty great companies. So that's something else I'm really passionate about.
You sure are, and I have such fond memories of the experience that I had on the mastermind, and we're still super closely connected with the community that got created there. So I'm super excited to talk more about that later today. We definitely have some questions about it. Look forward to that a little bit later in the episode. To kick us off, a question off the cuff. What's the one thing you love the most about the place you call home now?
In Toronto?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great question. One thing I love about Toronto specifically is how diverse it is and just how multicultural it is. I grew up in a pretty rural, small fishing village in Nova Scotia, not too far from where the Titanic sank, and a bit siloed growing up in a really small part of the country. You don't really get much exposure to what the rest of the world has to offer. So after graduating school, I did move to California for a little while, but ultimately came back to Toronto, where I've been the last 5 years. And I just find it's a beautiful place. There's so many different walks of life here. It really is a melting pot for some like rich cultures. So I think that's definitely my favorite part. There's always something to do here, right? It's a little bit of New York energy here, but just really diverse and a lot of great people.
I love the fact that the first thing you go to when you start talking about it is diversity, because I think it sets us up very nicely for the rest of the things that we wanted to discuss today. Because my very next question for you is, well, maybe you'll mention this again, maybe you won't. What are the essential qualities and skills that a great partnerships manager, a great partnerships professional should have? And how can an aspiring partnerships leader cultivate those qualities?
Yeah, really, really great question. So some of the things that I think about when I think about, when I think of the top partnership professionals that I know, some of the things that come to mind first is a growth mindset. So one of the reasons I really love partnerships as a profession is it's highly entrepreneurial, right? And a lot of us work at startups, scale ups. So there's a lot of implicit entrepreneurialism that goes along with a lot of different roles. But I think the partnerships function is unique in that, if you're at a giant company, maybe your role is like very limited in terms of scope. But a lot of partner professionals are what I call full life cycle partner managers, where they're required to, hunt potential partners, get them on calls, get them excited to partner with them, so close them like an AE would, and then they have to switch into partner account management mode and actually manage the future of that partnership. And so in that life cycle, you're a BDR hunting, you're an AE closing, you're then a customer success / account manager to maintain the relationships. No, by the way, to stand up those partnerships, you have to do things like marketing activities. You're probably touching product and engineering, right? If there's an integration involved. So like any good C-suite or CEO even, you have to be dangerous and competent across all major functions. So I think if that's true, then a growth mindset and an entrepreneurial mindset is key. Otherwise, you might become good at one of those skill areas, but you're not going to get well rounded to really max out your performance. And then the second piece I'll say is accountability, right? Which goes hand in hand with being humble, being able to be confident, but also accept, hey, I have a lot of room to grow. And if I don't invest in my growth, I'm going to get limited and I'm going to reach a plateau. So growth mindset / humbling yourself and having a accountability, those two things typically go hand in hand with the top performers that I've seen.
I love that. I love that, and it resonates very strongly. This whole one-man band / Renaissance person is definitely something that I'm very acutely attuned to, and I think many of us are. And I'd say also a shout out goes to both Antonio Caridad, our dear colleague, who would definitely stick in there somewhere the need to be an operations wizard as well. And of course, Ryan Marcoux, who's been in one of our previous episodes, would fully agree with you on the need to be a broad specialist in many areas. And having, doesn't mean that you are unable to hold your ground in depth in any one of them, but it does mean that you generally need to be more of a generalist than many other professions. Let's not call out specific ones, but I would say this what makes our career path special. But talking about career paths, so this makes it, it's a personal challenge. So I'm going to ask you about that as well, and hopefully get some free advice from the guru. Like in this amazingly weird and weirdly amazing career, where you have to have like what seems like 10 career paths simultaneously, how do you take ownership of your career growth?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And so I think when you're early on, first of all, no one teaches you how to navigate your career path, right? If you're lucky enough to have parents or close friends early in your life, post college, who can show you the path, then you're very fortunate and lucky. But for most of us, no one ever taught us how to navigate career path. We all just kind of fall. You hear the term like fall into this or fall into that. So I think that's the first thing. The best advice I can give based on hindsight and just having the experience of having gone through my career is just getting as much exposure to variety as you can, really experimenting. Doesn't mean you take 10 different jobs and inside 2 years, but how can you even just start building up a network to talk to as many people as possible who are in distinct roles and distinct industries? I think there's a lot of value in just opening the aperture and talking to people who are in totally random roles seemingly, because you never know, maybe in a year or two from now, you might be trending in that direction of that industry. And you'll be grateful then that you had spoken to someone who was in that industry before. So that's the first point, is how exposed are you to different job types, different industries, different roles? And if not much, well then, your perception of the job market is going to be really limiting. Versus if you're someone who's well connected, investing and meeting people across distinct industries, your perception of the job market might be totally different. So I think that's step one, is can you increase your awareness? And then step two is, as you start to get more experience, switch from saying, okay, I'm limited by the jobs that are available and that's the market to me, and flip your mindset to more of a bottom-up approach where it's like, hey, I'm starting as a professional and as an individual to understand what I'm actually interested in. I know the things that drain my cup from an activities perspective, and I know the things that fire me up and really put a smile on my face. How can I start being intentional about designing the type of role that I want to exist in, and finding companies who employ such roles? I think the point there is being really intentional about designing your ideal circumstance bit by bit as you come to understand what works and what doesn't, and really just not jumping straight into roles just because you feel like you need to, but really taking your time. And the more people you talk to, the more you're going to understand what might be out there.
Man, I love everything you said, and I love in particular two things that you've mentioned. They've resonated very strongly. One of them is putting a smile on your face, right? And I don't think we think about that often enough. And maybe when we do, we might be, I don't know, we might feel shame. We might feel like that's unprofessional. We might feel like this has nothing to do. Looking back at my career, I can only confirm that you will thank yourself for focusing on things that really bring you joy. It's tough, but it's tougher when you go in for things that actually, as you say, drain your cup. That's number one. And the other one, the other keyword that you mentioned that really resonated, not least because we have content about it, is you mentioned network. So if you all have missed our episode covering Mikhail Mangold's book on building a great network, definitely check that out. And definitely check out Mikhail's book. It's a great starter. Not just a starter. It's a great deep insight into creating amazing, robust networks. But let's flip this a little bit from the other side. So we talked a little bit about what you should do to craft your career path. What about some of the common mistakes that you see young professionals or even mature professionals do when they're trying to level up?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's actually, I was going to go back to your previous question, but I think it's related to this question as well. One of the other best pieces of advice I can give on kind of just navigating your career progression and really giving yourself more leverage and control is to whatever role you're in right now, even if you don't really like your job, I can't stress enough at how important it is to still figure out a way to make an impact and develop your skills, right? Because, look, there's a big stigma for like people who jump around jobs, right? And people are hiring and they look at someone like, oh, look at that. They've had, 7-month stint, an 8-month stint, a 9-month stint. They don't want to touch them, right? And I'm not someone who subscribes to that notion. But the one thing I will say is that if you're going to be in a job for maybe it's only 6 to 10 months because it's not a good fit, at least at the time you're there, really dig in and try to maximize that opportunity, even if you hate it, and just figure out a way to max out your impact. Because when you then go to interview at another job and you have to explain these gaps, you can say, hey, look, to be honest, I was there for 10 months. It wasn't a good fit, but I'll tell you this, I still dug in, I still showed up, and I still kicked ass. I still learned these skills, and here's the impact I had, albeit in a shorter sample size. So that's one point. And generally speaking, the more of an impact you can have generally, obviously, if you love your job, chances are you'll have a bigger impact. But regardless, if you can still find a way to have an impact, it's just going to give you so much more leverage when you then want to go test the job market because you have a stronger resume and profile. But what you don't want to do is you show up at a job, you're like, this isn't the job for me, and you mail it in, right, for 6 months. So I think that's a mistake. To answer the current question, Andre, is one of the biggest mistakes I see is that there's this perception now that, unless I'm in my perfect circumstance as a job, I don't really need to go 100%, right? I don't need to give it my all and try to max out my performance. But the problem is you might find yourself 2 years in and you were in 2 to 3 different jobs across 2 years, and you don't really have a powerful story to tell a future employer, right? It's like, hey, tell me, you were in a couple roles the last couple of years. Like, tell me, what was your impact? What did you own? And if you're sitting there like, crap, I just bounced around a few jobs, but I never really had one big win or one big impact, a story to tell. I would say that's one of the biggest mistakes I see, right? Is people not making enough out of the opportunities they have because they're maybe not happy in that situation. And so they just kind of pack it in, which I can understand a little bit, but it's like you need, there still should be a bar that you're trying to maintain. So you have that story.
No, I love it. And I couldn't agree with you more there. So yeah, folks, having a story to tell, especially if the circumstances, because think about this, especially if the circumstances are adverse, I'm not going to say it's easy, but yes, I'm going to say it's easier to excel, to be your best, to bring your full self to work when you absolutely love what you do and the people that you're with. Sure. Where's the challenge in that though? What's the story you're going to tell? Well, I was surrounded by these amazing people and they were all super supportive and the job I did was the best experience of my life. First question I would ask is, why the hell did you leave? Like, what went wrong?
Yep.
Whereas if your circumstances were a little bit adverse, but you managed to overcome that and be your best and bring your best self to work nonetheless and learn a lot and grow, I would like to hire the person like that. I wouldn't want to put them again through that crucible, but I would definitely count on them being absolutely super stellar at what they do. This is awesome.
Exactly.
I love that. I love this approach. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So sorry. Yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
I co-sign with everything you just said. And the other bigger mistake to double down on this question is people trying to skip steps, right? And I've made this mistake many times where imagine you're a first-time partner manager and 10 to 12 months in, you're starting to hit quota, you're starting to hit your KPIs, you're starting to get noticed. We have this, we all have these egos, right? Which is totally natural. And you have this self-inflated sense of your capabilities and your experience. and you want to take on more. And I'll always applaud ambition. I think it's rare actually. And so I love when my team members are super ambitious and want more responsibility, but you also need to, that's where staying humble is key, because what happens is if you step too far out of your comfort zone, you skip the growth zone and you go straight into the danger zone, right? Where you actually will fail and it will reinforce doubt, right? So it's like, how can you step out of your comfort zone? Yes, but into the growth zone, right? But not too far into the danger zone. I think that's a common mistake where people want to skip steps. They want promotions, they want to take on more responsibility, but they haven't really mastered the foundational layer stuff that's going to really be important as they take on more responsibility. And then if they fail, then it's going to be pretty damaging for them to think, oh, I just can't do that role. And it's like, well, no, you probably could, but you tried to skip from steps 3 to step 6. And because of that, you're a little bit out of your depth and, kind of reinforce some insecurities.
You're setting us up perfectly. Let's right click a little bit on the growth zone. So how can I stay ahead of the curve in terms of my skills? How do I make sure that they remain relevant and in demand? What's your advice?
Yeah, great question. My approach as a manager and a leader is regular evaluation. So feedback is one of the most important words in business and profession. I would say, in terms of self feedback, self evaluation, but also importantly giving feedback to others, and not just in formal annual 360 evaluations, but how can you get to a point where you have a culture within teams, across departments, within a company where you're able to challenge directly and give people feedback with empathy, but ultimately giving them direct feedback in real time. So I think that's one of the most valuable instruments to answer your question of staying fresh, staying sharp, of what the most important skills are. Because if you're calling things out in real time, it's more dynamic. But then even within formal evaluations, I'm big on evaluating my team and giving them a chance to evaluate me on a quarterly basis. And within that, this is something we're doing more recently, is we have a proper growth track. We have a scorecard matrix across major skill areas like cross-functional collaboration, data decision making, SOP, documentation, building and leveraging. And we have expectations of scores based on your level, based on your seniority level, so to speak. And so we'll do these evaluations regularly. And the goal for each member or employee is, okay, what are the top 2, maybe 3 growth areas for you at this given time? Meaning you can improve in everything, but what are the 2 skill areas that if you improved on would result in the biggest impact driver for you in your given role? But then not just identifying what that is, which a lot of people can do, but how can you actually then be intentional about, okay, how can we measure success in terms of growth here? And how can we design activities, et cetera, that are going to force you to come face to face with growth, right? A simple example would be, if public speaking was a skill area, how can we give you public speaking opportunities? Presenting to larger partner teams in office, presenting on webinars and at trade shows. So the key is not just identify those key skill areas that are holding someone back, but how can you ultimately set up a process for which they can actually come face to face with developing that skill, like practice. And then how do you actually measure what success is? So what is the exit criteria for removing that from the growth track? And that's how it works. It's not set for just Q1. And then at the end of the quarter, did you hit it? No. Okay, well, let's just move on to the next growth area. It can stay on there for 6 to 10 months. It stays until it's removed, right? And that's why defining what that exit criteria looks like is key, so you can measure.
Well, I mean, that's an amazing answer. I have very little to add to it, other than the fact that I've heard there is a great program out there tailored to partnerships professionals to maybe address some of this. So let's talk about that a little bit. But before we get back to how the Partnership Mastermind helps you generate and acquire the skills and the mindsets, let me ask you this question, because I am in awe of what you're trying to, well, not trying, what you're successfully putting together there. What inspired you to create the Partnership Mastermind? And what gaps are you aiming to fill for others, for yourself? Why, man, and how?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So I think a few things to unpack there. One, I'm very fortunate that I was born with a pure love for teaching, right? I grew up most of my life thinking I was going to become a teacher, a high school math teacher, for instance. And then even as I went through university, having completed a PhD in organic chemistry, the goal was to become a professor. And I love research, and I'm very much an experimentalist and an inventor. So I love that part. But to be honest, what I loved most was actually the teaching side of it. The research was fun, but the teaching, the lecturing, that was really what gave me the most satisfaction. And so ultimately entering the business world, I was a bit sad because I'm like, I feel like I'm leaving teaching behind. But then I quickly realized as I became a manager and a leader that, hey, I'm coaching all the time. I'm teaching all the time, teaching my team. And then eventually, I quickly realized as I've been in the partnership landscape the last 5+ years, I quickly realized just how big the void was, that whereas compared to like more traditional roles like sales, marketing, customer success, not that they don't have room for growth, but there's so many things built out like medic sales program, president's club. Like it's a much more formalized role, but the same is not true for partnerships. So there was clearly a void where people were coming to me and being like, hey, like, how did you do that thing that you do in your full-time job? Like, can you help me with that? And then started helping people and mentoring people. And then, the demand just started to naturally creep up where I was like, wow, like there really is a gap in the market. I love to teach. I have a lot of experience in one-to-many coaching and teaching situations. And so it just became a natural progression where it's like, okay, I'm just going to see if I can help more and more people. And if there's value there, and 2 years in now, it's clear that there's a lot of value to be had. And so it's just been a very natural progression where it's like, I love to teach. There's a huge void in the market. People were demanding help more and more and more. And so I thought, how can I scale this and help more people as possible?
Man, all I can say is thank you, and you're an inspiration in that regard. And definitely, I can confirm that you are filling a huge gap and a tremendous void that exists in this space. And I can not recommend highly enough both the community that you've created, and also I mentioned already how fondly I look back at the community we had and how fondly I participate in the community of alumni that we still have going, but also at your actual way to bring out the best in all of us. So long story short, folks, links to the Partnership Mastermind in the description and in the comments below. Do check them out. Highly recommended. So coming back to what we just discussed before diving into why the hell you even dared to do this, luckily for all of us, let's go back. So what is the Partnership Mastermind meant to bring out in terms of skills or mindsets? What are you focusing on and how are you addressing that?
Yeah. So to be clear, from an ideal customer profile, so to speak, I'm most passionate about supporting the earlier stage folks in partnership roles. I think there's a lot of value to be had for more senior folks. Those are in like director, VP level roles, or just people who have been in it for 10+ years. And I enjoy helping those people to some extent. But for me, there's way more people in need who are in that early stage bucket, but also they don't have the same benefit of experience. And so they don't know what they don't know. And they don't quite have the same skills in terms of how to learn, right? And learning is obviously a key skill. So that's the first thing I can say is I'm most passionate about supporting those early stage folks. Maybe you're new to partnerships. Maybe you've been in it for a while, but you're stuck and you just don't have that community. So that's kind of the who that we're trying to support. And in terms of the ultimate goal, really it's how can we actually partner with these leading companies, could be early stage startups who are ahead of the game, could be the mature companies in the world like Google, HubSpot, Klaviyo, etc. How can we partner with them and say, hey, look, we know that partnerships is a relatively new function at your company. And we know for a fact that you're really struggling to, hire great professionals, onboard them with tailored onboarding, right? Not just enrolling them in whatever standard onboarding you have. Ongoing training and retention. We know that's a big struggle for you as a company. We know your leaders, so your head of partnerships, your VP of partnerships. We know that they're completely overwhelmed and don't have the time to provide bespoke, tailored training to their partnerships teams. So partner with us at Partnership Mastermind, and we're going to take that off your plate. We're going to partner with you. We're going to help you design, white label in-house training programs for how to onboard partner employees, how to ongoing training, custom, growth tracks, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the vision, right? Yes, we're serving the employees themselves, but how can we actually partner with these top companies, the Stripes of the world, where they can actually work with us to help them build these in-house programs? Because we're happy if they send their employees to us, which is the current model, right? Where a student will get L&D budget approval and they'll come join the program, like yourself. That's great, but I would actually rather the company get the credit, right? I get the satisfaction of helping the students learn, but I don't need Partnership Mastermind to get all the credit. How can I help these companies actually like white label these programs so they then get the credit and the leaders get the credit? That to me is the best state, because if companies have this in-house, they're way more likely to invest more and more long term, which is the goal. So that's really where we're going. Just to give you a glimpse, is work with these companies to help them design and implement and integrate these in-house training programs, so that in 5 to 10 years, they don't have to be sending them to Chris Lavoie or Partnership Mastermind. They just have these things codified internally.
Well, folks, there's only two things to say. First of all, will definitely be ways for you to get in touch with Chris and Partnership Mastermind somewhere around in the description and the bio and all the usual places. And the other thing I'd like to say, put this on pause, rewind, and re-listen to the way Chris just talked about this. And this is exactly the partnerships mindset. This is what partnership mindset looks like in action. The genuine passion with which you talk about it lit me up. And when you started describing the value and the interests of your potential partners that you have in mind, I mean, like, yeah, that's a partnership leader right there. This is what we should all be aspiring to. So, you know what, folks, we could wrap it up right here because you just heard how it's done. But I have a few more questions for you, if you don't mind. So we talked a little bit about the evolution already. So I think that's going to be super exciting. And I can't wait, and I definitely can't recommend enough to anybody who's listening to this who has a role to play in the L&D department. Definitely check this out. Both for these people, these decision makers, and for individual students as well, who might want to be signing up on an individual basis. What's the one major transformation they can expect to experience as a result of participating in the program?
For sure. So fortunate to have over 120 graduates now. So pretty good sample size in terms of feedback and to understand the impact. And I check in with folks who have come through the programs over a year ago, even now. So have the benefit of hindsight here to be able to answer the question. I'd say the biggest transformational impact that's happened is confidence boost, right? Even on the first session, one of the things I do is I have all the students complete an intake form so I can snapshot where you're at right now. And then I use ChatGPT to analyze the data and then basically consolidate a list of like, hey, like here are the top concern areas for each individual. Here's like their biggest anxieties. Here's their like biggest goals and ambitions. And I see these, I literally see it on their faces on lecture one, this light bulb moment of like, wow, I'm in a group here of people who have similar challenges and have similar goals. Like how refreshing is even just that, right? And you'll get a kicker to this, Andre, but one of our early star students in this group, she said, one of the hardest parts of my job is that the closest people I work with are not colleagues I work with, they're partner employees, which, brings out this like feeling of isolation of like, wow, like you don't actually have this huge network system. So I think that's one of the biggest transformational effects is just this confidence of like, wow, I'm now in a group with people who are like me. And I think there's a lot of value there. Then you then spend 8 weeks with them. You come face to face with your key growth areas. You get professional knowledge shared each week. You have these one-on-one calls with people in the group. And so your confidence right away, but then at the end of the program has taken a big jump. And now all of a sudden you feel empowered, right? You feel like I've got this little mini network now, a little bit of a halo. And it's been amazing to see what's happened since, in our first cohort in March of 2023, some of those students have now become best friends and started a podcast together. And some of these students have gone on from like senior IC to now they're head of partnerships at some like pretty legitimate tech companies. So it just seems like one of the biggest impact drivers is it's a huge catalyst for confidence and just like catching you up. Like maybe you're feeling behind, right? What like a top performer looks like. It seems like we're bridging that gap. in a pretty accelerated timeline for like just a nice top up of like certain skills, knowledge, confidence, and network. Whatever that was missing for you, we fill that gap, and then you can start running again.
I love this. I love this, and I couldn't be more excited about the new waves of folks who sign up, because one of the things that you've created as well, and I think it was a brilliant insight, is maybe again, maybe not unique, but not everybody thinks of doing that. Is that community of alumni and the real feeling of camaraderie and support that continues to exist there. So it doesn't even matter almost which specific wave you participated in. You feel like the network of people who feel this very strong bond of attachment to each other just keeps growing for you organically without you even having to almost do anything. I mean, clearly, bring your best self to it. Like you get out what you put in, and yet, like the amount of people suddenly who look at you as a peer, as somebody who's gone through a very similar experience and has similar challenges and passions and interests, it just keeps growing for you once you become part of this family. So,
Exactly.
I mean, but look, not so much to say that we had enough of the Partnership Mastermind. We'll definitely keep hearing about it from you, everybody. If you don't yet, I don't know why, follow Chris on LinkedIn at least. He puts out some amazing stuff out there, and now and again he also talks about the program. So you'll be sure not to miss any new updates. But let's talk about you before we close a little bit, because I know some things about you and your life. I know for a fact that you've had a tremendous career, and you continue having a tremendous career as a partnerships leader. So you have a full-time job. But launching a program like the Partnership Mastermind also requires a heck of a lot of effort. How do you manage your time and energy while balancing that and some kind of a personal life too?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I get this question a lot, like, hey, like do you just work all the time? And the answer is no. I think one thing I've fortunately gotten a lot better at in the recent years is just really picking my spots. I'm someone who's not always working, but when I work, I work deeply, and I try to minimize my distractions. So, and I don't really work much on weekends, but I think I'm very structured. So like my full-time job is my full-time job. That's, so my 9 to 5 is earmarked for that. But then in the evenings, maybe I'll go for a walk with the family. We'll have dinner, go to the gym maybe in the morning, and then I'll work for a couple hours at night. So just really, really intentional about the bucketing my time. And then I'm a big fan of templatizing everything. So for these mastermind cohorts, for instance, these 8-week boot camps that I run, which I'm now in the 8th version, to be honest, I've templatized basically everything. Like, okay, it's week 3. What's my Monday message to the group look like? I've already done this 7 times before. That's already copy and paste. The lecture slides are largely already built. I just polish them up a bit. So for me, it's gotten easier and easier to like moderate and lead these groups because I intentionally future-proof and design things so that they're scalable and highly templatized. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then the last thing is cheesy, but it's I love what I do, right? I love leading a team in my full-time job, and I really love leading these learning initiatives. So it doesn't feel like work to me, genuinely. I know that's a cheesy cliche, but when I'm working at like 8 o'clock at night, I'm in my element, and I'm just thrilled to be doing it. So otherwise, it would feel like work, and yeah, I probably would burn out. But to be honest, I'm just having so much fun; it doesn't feel like work.
Look, folks can comment in the comment section how they feel about that, but I say there's nothing cheesy about what you say, and we've heard it in many different places that it's tough when you're forced to, and we talked about this a little bit in terms of your career path. It's tough to immediately, especially at early stages, but even later, I would say too, just identify your passion, right? Just say, okay, I'm going to spend 20 years figuring out what is it that I love. But there's a certain element of luck, but also persistence and perseverance in sticking with what you do. Just like you said, even when you don't feel like you fit right in, and then finding through that, what is it that makes you happy? What is it that puts a smile on your face, as you said? And then eventually the fire of passion just lights up. So I guess we're both cheesy, just tappers.
Couple cheeseheads.
Live with that, deal with that. Exactly. Just a couple of cheeseheads having a good time. Tell us what you think about that. Let me flip this on the other side. So, right, structure and templatizing. And also you mentioned tooling quite a bit. Obviously, I mean, we're not going to discover a new continent for anybody when we say, yes, of course, lean on generative AI. It makes sense. don't make it a crutch without which you'll fall down, but certainly don't underestimate its power. What are the other challenges and pitfalls you'd advise other aspiring entrepreneurs or creators to be aware of?
Yeah. So I think hit on it in the last question, but really avoid doing things for the wrong reasons. You might think you've found something that it could be lucrative, and that's great. And if you got to feed your family, then by all means go deep on that. But if the main things you're thinking about are how much money you might be able to make on some entrepreneurial pursuit, but you're not super fired up about the passion and the problem you're trying to solve, then you're going to run out of gas, right? And you're going to make poor decisions, and it's not going to scale. So I think it's great to test many things, but commit to few is something I was always taught, right? And I'm very much an experimentalist where I'll try a lot of things, but I'll try to resist the urge to plunge too deeply prematurely until I really feel like I'm really committed to it. So I think that's one mistake I see. And then one of the mistakes candidly I've made even in building Partnership Mastermind is really just, if you're going to commit, right? If it's really important to you and you're really excited about it and you have traction, just really accelerate, really put your foot down on the gas pedal. To be honest, it's been great, Partnership Mastermind, over the last 2 years, but in the last 4 to 6 months, so much more progress has happened because I finally stepped up and I said, you know what? I have some hours free here and there on the evenings that I'm not really doing anything productive with. Why don't I just really focus on the business? And I've been working with a coach as well to help me, and it's made a huge difference. So it's like, test many things, but don't commit too deeply until you really have some signals that, like, wow, this is really exciting. Like for the first mastermind cohort, it was free. The first ever group I did, it was no one paid, and I just let people in because I was like, I have no idea what this is going to look like. So that was me just committing on a low hanging fruit way. And then people clearly got value from it. So then it's like, okay, I'll keep doing this. And then eventually I was like, okay, people are really getting value from this. I'm going to invest a lot more time in it. And then the second piece is when you do find something that you really do commit to, just really make it a priority, right? If you really want to build anything entrepreneurial, you can't just, spend time on it. Oh, this week I do a little bit, and then the next week I don't even touch it. So if you're going to commit, just commit, and you'll be shocked at what will add up over a few months.
I love that. I absolutely love it. The commitment, the ability to start small and grow incrementally, getting advice, learning, first of all, from your own experience, but also getting advice. You mentioned coaching. I think I would highly recommend that as well to anybody. Look,
Yep.
Chris, we've already spent more of our time than we initially planned to, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I'm so excited and so happy to see the program grow. And thank you within all of that to find the time to talk to me and to do this for our listeners today.
I really appreciate it. Honestly, you've always been a great friend and great ambassador for partnership professionals in general. Big fan of the podcast, and honestly just thrilled for you to give me a microphone to try to land on some more ears in case people are needing help.
You're a legend. You're a star. Thanks for doing this with us. Well, folks, thanks for joining us on the Tap today. Big thanks to everybody who listened, and don't forget to subscribe. Find us wherever you get your podcasts from, and please follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn to stay tuned for the next episodes. Links are below. Catch you next time on the Tap.